Michael, you write about fate and destiny. I think, more than, I mean, that's an area you've written on a lot. And I
Well,
wonder whether you could tell us a bit about that.
well, and that goes back to a number of things, like trying to figure out when I was really young, what's wrong here? Why are my parents so unhappy? Why is this whole neighborhood so conflicted? And then when I got out of solitary confinement, I had to understand it. And one of the few ways to understand it was fate. And on my 13th birthday, when I opened that book early in Edith Hamilton's book on myth,
Mm.
it's just simply called Mythology, is the story of the three sisters of fate who give you the thread of your life and
Right.
which becomes your fate. And so I had absorbed that. And so then I was I forget what year it was and all that kind of thing. As a mythologist, I can't do dates, but I can I can do
You
stories
can
which
do
are time.
aeons or something like that.
Yeah, and timeless things make sense to me.
Mm.
But anyway, I had been considering fate and then thinking about destiny as the opposite of fate. And then a very Jungian thing happened, synchronicity, you could call it, is I was at this conference and I was happy to be at that conference because I wanted to meet James Hillman,
Mm.
who maybe then, but certainly shortly after, was the only living direct student of Carl Jung.
Mm.
Um, so I wanted to meet him, and he was giving a talk at this conference, and I went to the talk, and it was a very explosive talk, and the room got divided into the people that liked it and the people typical Hillman kind of thing. And then this conference
Which
was
is what
near
I
late.
love about him, by the way.
Well, yeah, I
The
mean,
fire of his
exactly.
soul.
Right. So I go outside after the conference, got very intense in there, and I see Dr. Hillman standing on this little deck over the lake. So I thought, well, I'm going to go and introduce myself, you know. He looks like he's in a kind of contemplative mood, but I'm going to do it anyway. So I come up and then he looks at me and I think, okay, there's my opening. And I say, here's my name. I was just at your lecture. And he goes, well, what did you think? And I said, well, the room got really divided into pro and con. And he said, why? And I said, well, I think it was partly your speech uh, and your title, because I think your title was Jesus Christ and the Atomic Bomb, Two Children of the Modern Age. I think you split the room
Could have
the way
something to
you
do with
would
that.
like splitting the atom. And he goes, oh, I think you're right. He said, so what are you interested in? Almost like my aunt saying, what are you interested in when I was 13? And I said, well, right now I'm thinking about fate and destiny. He goes, what are you thinking about them? I said, well, how fate limits and destiny pulls you beyond the limits. He said, that's a damn good thought. And I just felt I got blessed. It was like having someone bless my intelligence, actually. And he said, keep thinking about that. So then I wrote a book about it.
Mm.
And so to me, it's one of the few ways of putting into one storyline the fact that each person is limited and restricted by circumstances of birth, by DNA, as they call it nowadays, by historical influences, by local neighborhood influences, and so on. And yet each person is secretly tied to a star and aimed at a destination that is meaningful and transcendent in its essence. And so
This is a bit
hence
of
the
an
book.
excursion, Michael, but whilst you were saying all that, I was thinking of the time of COVID. I think many people had the experience of the limitations um,
Yes.
and the sensory deprivation, the entertainment deprivation, etc. I'm
Yeah.
speaking
Yeah.
myself included.
Yeah.
It's what you're talking about, how it opens up, um,
Yeah.
which is it's kind of what is it? It's remedial training for Western culture too, because we kind of think the straight upward path, success,
Yeah.
everything should be expansive, open, good, da da da.
Yeah.
But it's the opposite side of the coin that the limitation actually brings the open.
Yeah. Well, during COVID, one thing I was writing about and talking about was that we're all going down. We're all descending. We're
Mm.
falling out of mutual community.
Mm.
Many of us are restricted in our homes or wherever we are. Why not make it a conscious descent?
Mm.
And that was the old idea in the Greek myths. the difference between falling into the underworld and choosing to descend. Katabasis, the conscious descent into the depths of the soul in order to reclaim something that was missing in the outer world or in the conscious world of the individual, or both. And so I started writing and talking about the isolation and the social distancing, as it was being called, as the opportunity to consciously descend and find what's missing in our lives. And you know, that's how I saw it, which is, I got that directly from Greek myths. But it's true in other myths too. In the process of rites of passage or initiation, a young person would be put into a dark hut and denied food and stuff so that they would go into this kind of descent. You know, in parts of Africa, a young person going through an initiation is buried up to their neck in the earth, as if they actually descend into the realm of the dead in order to be reborn. And so
There's the
yeah,
ordeal aspect of it, isn't there? Always.
what's central to it is an experience of death, which, if we put it into Jungian terms or depth psychology terms, is the death of the ego.
Mm.
So that the way a person grows is their ego dies so that they can be reborn with a greater, more conscious self. And so all the things that, you know, the modern world, like you were referring to it, is avoids death. And people are basically don't want to think about death. And yet, other than life, it's the only thing we all experience together. And so the old saying was, die before you die, which means die the little deaths in order to have a greater life. And so I was just drawing from the myths, and I was drawing from that isolation in prison and saying that we go down, we let go, we lose everything in order to find a deeper thing, and we come back with a bigger sense of our own life and something more to give to life.